Nigeria borrowed 5.52 trillion naira in 2020 DMO. The debt profile of Nigeria worsened in 2020, analysis of data released by the Debt Management Office (DMO) has shown. According to the 2020 debt data released by the DMO, the country's total debt further rose by more than 20% within 1 year period as the nation's debt portfolio rose by 5.52 trillion. As of December 2019, the country's debt portfolio stood at 27.4 trillion. However, the latest data released by the DMO showed that the country's debt portfolio had risen to 32.92 trillion naira. This means that the nation's debt profile rose by 5.52 trillion or 20.15% within a 1 year period. As a measure of the size of the country's debt, the country spent a total of 1.85 trillion naira to service its domestic debt in 2020, while it spent another $1.57 billion to service its external debt. A breakdown of the current debt statistics showed that the country debt to foreign creditors stood at $33.35 billion or 12.71 trillion as of December 31, 2020. This represents 38.6% of Nigeria's total debt commitment. Analysis of the debt external debt portfolio showed that the federal government has the lion's share of $28.57 billion. This represents 33.08% of the country's total indebtedness. The states, on the other hand, owe $4.77 billion in foreign loans. This represents 5.53% of the country's total debt portfolio. In terms of domestic debt, the country owed 20.21 trillion naira as of December 31, 2020. This represented 61.40% of the country's total debt portfolio. Splitting this between the federal government and the sub-national government showed that the federal government owed a total 16 trillion naira to domestic creditors. This represents 48.68% of the entire national debt portfolio. The state governments as well as the Federal Capital Territory Administration, on the other hand, owed a total of N4.19 trillion. This represents 12.72% of the country's total debt portfolio. The country's debt portfolio has been on the increase, raising concern about sustainability. The government has consistently pointed out that the size of the country's debt is within manageable level given the size of its gross domestic product. Experts, however, point out that declining revenue and increasing cost of servicing debt have made the position of the government on debt sustainability untenable. In order to increase revenue, the government recently passed a new finance law that, among other things, raised the rate of value-added tax from 5 to 7.5%. It also offered a number of incentives aimed at increasing the tax net. However, a debilitating economy has been frustrating the capacity of the citizens to pay taxes, especially to governments across the country that they consider profligate and impervious to their needs. Another challenge that has increased the risk of the expanding debt portfolio, especially the foreign loans component, is the rising exchange rate. Government aimed to address this by reducing its external borrowing, thereby backtracking from its earlier decision to raise foreign borrowing to 40%. At 38.6%, the foreign debt component of the total debt stock was only 1.4% from the 40% target which the government had embarked on to take advantage of cheaper funds abroad.
Yeah, President Muhammadu Buhari, this is a clarion call for you to please act and act immediately and make sure that the contract for the renovation of the dead Port Harcourt refinery is immediately cancelled. This is a time for you not to be deaf and dumb, but to listen to the yearnings, aspirations of Nigerians. That is a rape of our common patrimony, and we expect that, Mr. President, you will stop the Ministry of Petroleum from carrying out this wicked stealing that is about to take place. I use this opportunity to call on you, Mr. President, to carry out a forensic investigation of the petroleum sector, and specifically this outrageous, irresponsible, calamitous renovation that is about to take place. Mr. President, you may not be aware, but in the last 5 years, we have spent 1.6 trillion in the turnaround maintenance of these dead refineries. 1.6 trillion naira have been spent in the turnaround maintenance of these dead refineries in the last 5 years. I also want to put it to you, Mr. President, that in the last 3 years, none of our 4 refineries have produced even 1 barrel or 1 liter of refined oil. Not one, or refined product, as the case may be. In 3 years, they have been moribund, they are not working, they are not functional, and they have not produced even 1 drop of refined product. And I want to also put it to you that over the years, we have been spending over 10 billion naira every month in the maintenance of a dead refinery that is not producing. Mr. President, with all these statistics, it is laughable and outrageously unreasonable for anyone wanting to invest $1.5 billion, over 700 billion on the Port Harcourt refinery. Mr. President, as I speak to you, that refinery was up for sale some few years ago for $500 and something million. If it was up for sale for $500 and something million, why on earth will anybody now want to renovate for $1.5 billion? Mr. President, enough is enough. We are waiting for you to act on this, and failure to act on this, Nigerians will act. We have no other country to call our own. We are ready to carry out a peaceful action to press you and those in power to be responsible to governance. Nigerians are not fools. You don't do.